welcome to the lecture on nutrition, specifically on quality, quantity, and timing. So, what I want to cover here is the quality, the quantity, and the timing of nutrition, but more so how they influence each other and that they are actually completely connected. And this is something I find very rarely spoken about, that people tend to attach themselves to a certain camp, that I'm team quality, I'm team quantity, or team timing, and I'll expand on that. But the main point is that they all influence each other so much that it becomes silly to just pick one without realizing that that also impacts another, and that it's way better off looking at all three simultaneously and recognizing how they are connected. Right, so first, let's cover each of those. What are they? Quality, that's what you are consuming. How well that is digested, the macronutrients, the micronutrients in that food. So someone that would be team quality, let's say, that's someone that would argue that it doesn't matter so much how much you eat or when you eat, just focus on quality food. An example could be carnivore people, and they argue for meat, right? That is the best quality food. That's why it's good. It could also be vegans, ironically, because they simply just don't agree on what is quality. But the argument is the same. It's focus on what is good quality food. That's it. Quantity is someone that says that how much you eat is the most important variable. So there's if it fits your macros group camp, and that say that it doesn't really matter what you eat as long as you eat this much calories or this much protein. And people can disagree within that camp as well, right? Of how much protein do you need or how much calories do you need, but they essentially don't focus very much on where you're getting that from. As long as you fit this quantity, then you're fine, right? So that's a quantity focused argument. Then timing, that's when you consume your meals, when you eat. So fasting is one example of someone that's it's not too important what it is or even how much it is, as long as you eat in a limited time frame, for example. Could also be someone that argues that eating just after training, you're more anabolic, you're more sensitive to it, so you will digest it better, it will go to your muscles instead. That's also a timing focused argument, that the food is better absorbed, it's better utilized at a specific time. Right, so people tend to fall into one distinct camp out of these three, whereas my point is that they all influence each other, right? And we should look at all three simultaneously, realizing that they all matter to a large extent, and that you can't really cover one without influencing the other. So, as an example, if you eat in a restricted time window, so you're limiting, it's a timing based argument, that as a consequence will probably mean you consume less food. So you're already touching on the quantity side of things. So if you skip breakfast, that's one meal less. For most people, unless they make other adjustments and purposely eat more in other meals, that means that they affected quantity, right? So that's a very direct correlation we can already see by just focusing on one. There's also more indirect consequences. Let's say if someone focuses on eating more protein, their quantity focused argument, they want 200 grams of protein a day, let's say. That would influence the quality, the type of food that they're eating. Most likely positively, although that would be subjective as well, right? But it would probably mean more, or it would mean more protein sources, which generally speaking is better sources of food than carbs and fats. That there are more bad sources of fats, let's say. And I say that lightly, bad in quotations. Right, so my point is that they influence each other. There's a strong correlation between each of those. So we're better off realizing that and not making a pure, it doesn't matter how much you eat, just focus on the right quality of food. And that's another point actually, that those people also usually assume that quantity will be automatically taken care of if you focus on quality. It's so difficult to distinguish between those words. So don't worry about how much you eat, just focus on eating well and that will take care of it itself. Might be true. It might mean, oh, okay, focus on eating more protein and that will take care of itself. Might be true, right? It's not automatically true. So that's my point. It's not fair to assume that that's just across the board going to be true. If, for example, personally, if you tell me, eat as much as you want, just as long as it's this, even if it's meat, let's say, which I would, my opinion is the best food, the best food group. I will overeat because I have a massive appetite. So if I get 0 restrictions in quantity, I will overeat. I will have too many calories, right? So for someone else, if they just get that restriction, might mean that it auto-regulates, right? That might mean that the quantity goes down to the point or goes up to the point that you want it to be from the quality, right? Still impacts each other. So we need to realize that and really put an emphasis. So when we make an diet intervention or advise someone a certain way, we need to look at if we're making a main recommendation based on one of these, how will they impact the others, and making sure that for that person, it is a good impact, right? So if you're telling someone to limit, just eat in this time period, maybe we're doing that because we realize that will help them actually eat a lower quantity of food. So that's a domino effect to it. And what about the quality though? Giving 0 recommendation on that, so I'll just do that, right? For another person, myself included, if I say, oh, you get 2 hours to eat a day, but you can eat whatever you want, I will overeat. I can cover so much in 2 hours, it's not even funny, right? So that wouldn't even work for me. The quantity wouldn't be a factor and the quality would probably suffer as well, because I was like, okay, I have freedom within those 2 hours. It is those 2 hours now, so I'll eat whatever I want, both quality-wise and however much I want quantity-wise, right? They influence each other, once again. Someone else, that recommendation might lead them to eat less, which was what they wanted, and if you also add in a specific recommendation on quality, they might make better choices there as well. But exactly the point, right? In that example, the timing restriction meant less quantity. So we tick that box, good recommendation, but we still need to put something in place for quality. So that is also covered. Maybe that means a specific, narrowing the playing field. You don't get to eat these things, so you need to hit another, a certain amount of protein there, and that would limit them even further. So you see what I mean? Thinking about all these 3 is necessary to make good recommendations for yourself and for others. And picking just one camp and assuming that it would auto-regulate and that's it, risky. Might be true, might work out, but it's risky. And I think bringing more awareness to it, more recognition about how it impacts things will only prove beneficial for this, even if we then can make a simplified from there to make a recommendation that is simple for people, let's say. Actually, I think for this person, if I say carnivore, that will mean they're restricted to meat. So that will affect the quantity. And that will also take care of the timing because they're satisfied for longer. They won't eat as many meals, right? So one recommendation might cover those 3 for someone. But if we don't recognize that they do impact each other and it is always those 3 are always relevant, we're limiting ourselves in our recommendations. So hope I make my point clear. And as usual, it's quite abstract and quite general principles. But that is the point. Use this as a framework to think. So when you hear about a dietary nutrition recommendation, whether that is a specific diet to follow or a certain structure of how much to eat or a protocol that's timing related, think of like, okay, they are giving an argument in this category, one of those 3. How does that impact further? On the same hand, if someone has had a successful or not successful attempt at a certain strategy, you can quickly this way see where it fell short, right? Was it that they ended up overeating? It's like, oh, I tried keto, but I didn't lose weight. It was a quality focused argument that didn't lead to a quantity to covering that, right? They still overate because they didn't lose weight, right? Or, oh, I tried intermittent fasting, but it didn't work for me. You can easier pinpoint. Or if someone had success, like carnivores was amazing for me. Oh, because it covered those other ones as well, right? So use it as a framework, use it as a tool to understand why recommendations are given and why they work in certain cases and why they don't in certain cases, to build awareness, so that when you give recommendations to yourself in the way you structure your way of eating, and also to friends or clients, it has to be a recognition of the person you're talking to and how they work. And then when you give recommendations, you have to cover all three. And if you can do that by just one variable that automatically impacts the others positively, good, but don't assume it. Always make sure you tick all three and have those in mind. That is this lecture. Thanks for listening.